Becoming this recipe. 4 simple ingredients will have to band together with one doofus. Friendships will be forged. There will be losses, though. Gnocchi. Rated M for Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wake Up Smell The. Today's recipe is going to be gnocchi. Gnocchi is a very simple 3-ingredient recipe: potatoes, flour, egg, salt and pepper, of course, but we don't add those. Now, just a heads up, I am smart, so I got enough ingredients for what I thought would be a double batch, measured out everything double, videotaped that, used all the ingredients I had in-house, and realized I only had enough potatoes to do a one-time. So, that being said, the recipe is going to have some dub-overs so that I could correct my mistakes. In the end, the written recipe is correct, and my voiceovers will be correct, but it may not correlate with what's going on screen. But I wanted you to at least see the methodology and the way of creating the ingredients into gnocchi. So, bear with me. I make mistakes every single one, and one of these days we'll get it down. And with that being said, let's cook some food. The word gnocchi may be derived from the Italian word gnocchio, meaning a knot in wood, or from gnocca, meaning knuckle, due to their trademark shape. Okay, here's my first fix. So, in the original recipe, I accidentally did it off of 16 ounces because I thought the 2 potatoes that I started out with would end up around 16 ounces when it was all said and done. It only ended up at 8 ounces, so I needed to half the recipe. So, the measurements I'm going with now are 2 potatoes that are 16 ounces. They're going to cook down to 8 ounces. I need 8 ounces by weight of potato product, and then I need to have 1 each egg that I whip before, and that will help with the pillow and kind of keep it all together like a glue. And then with the flour, I'm going to need 3 ounces by volume plus 1.5 teaspoons of flour. I know that seems complicated at this point. I will go over it in more depth right before I measure it. And that is one of those ratio type recipes where, since we have 8 ounces of potato after cooking, we have to have a certain finite amount of flour, which I also mess up later in the video. So
that my gnocchi isn't so bland and simple all by itself, which it can be, I wanted to do a full dish with this. So I'm going to start out with a sausage. It's got tomato and basil in it. So I'm going to deglaze the pan after I cook this sausage with some white wine. I'm going to add some aromatics and garlic. And then to finish it off, to make it a nice creamy but light white sauce, I'm going to use heavy cream. So after this is cooked, it'll leave the bits. This will deglaze. This will be added as our aromatic. And this will finish it all off. And all those flavors will come together in a nice, simple gnocchi dish.
So go ahead and preheat your oven, and not to talk down to anyone or anything like that, I want you to know the reason we preheat at this point is so you can do other things and multitask while the oven is actually coming up. You can clean your potato and get it ready to be in the oven, so you don't have a clean and ready to go potato and turn around to a dead cold oven. So preheat your oven, scrub off the dirt and grime of your potatoes. I used a paper towel just so I could show you what it was like, kind of nasty, but any kind of brush or regular towel or paper towel will do. I'm doing it under a warm, kind of lukewarm water so that it will help in the cleaning process. And then we are going to measure our potatoes out, and I originally thought that this would make 16 ounces. After cooking, it made 8 ounces, but as I said, we fix as we go along, so just a heads up, around 18 ounces will only give you about 8 ounces after cooking. And we're going to take a fork. You can take a paring knife or any kind of knife. As long as you're puncturing the skin, you're not trying to completely engulf the tines or blade into it. You just want to pierce the skin so that it lets the pressure out when it starts to steam. And I'm going to start it in the microwave. And that is not just a weird, I don't know, cheap way of doing it. This actually helps with the beginning of the process. So I'm going to do 5 minutes and then turn them over and then do 5 more minutes. And this starts the process in a way that will help you in the long run with consistency of the potato when it is all done cooking. We need to have a pre-greased pan, and we're going to put our hot potatoes on that, and then they will be put into the oven.
Now that they've been microwaved, we need to put this into an oven at 450 for 18 to 20 minutes. So I figured I would use this mistake as a learning tool. And as I said, the recipe is incorrect on the video portion. The recipe at the bottom is in fact correct, and my dub over is in fact correct. But I will measure out the incorrect amount, as you would see. But I wanted to show you how I started out with 3/4 of a cup as the incorrect measure, but I needed to half it and figure out what is half of 3/4 a cup. So with this nice OXO, I guess you would just call it a dry measure cup. I have 4 different ones, and they have cup fractions and ounces on the other side that correlate with it. So with this one, I just looked at 3/4 of a cup, converted it into ounces, and then divided that by 2 to half it, and then go right to where the ounces are on that, and it makes it so much easier for me. That's one of the things I learned first when I was in school and then in restaurants, was converting things into ounces as opposed to looking at just cups of things. That way you can get a way better, a more finite measurement of things as opposed to trying to make another fraction out of 3/4. You turn it into ounces, have that number, and then you have the ounces right there.
So we need to measure out 3 ounces of AP flour by volume, and then add our 1.5 teaspoons of AP flour on top of that. And that again is because of the 8 ounces of potato product. We need to have a pretty finite amount of flour to potato. I also messed this up later on in the recipe, so we'll go over that. But 1 egg beaten. And you need to beat the egg because that way you control just how much is going into it so it doesn't all just slide in. Now you have 1 consistent egg that you can maybe put less or more in depending on how dry or wet your product is at the time. Now we need to check our potatoes to make sure they are done. So squeeze them, and if they give resistance but not complete mush, then you have nailed it. And I just need to cut the potato in half and let it cool for a small amount of time so I don't completely singe my fingers off. And so here is where I realize I have too small of an amount of potato product. So I was looking for 16 ounces. I only end up with 8 ounces. And that just means I needed to half the recipe I originally thought that I had. So 8 ounces of potato product, and as you see, I'm just taking a fork and scraping it out. That way it keeps it nice and fluffy. Okay, so I'm going to go with almost the pasta making method because it is technically a pasta of sorts. And I'm going to make a volcano or open kind of bowl that I can drop the egg into. So I start out with about half of it. and mix that together so it's not too wet or too dry. And I'm also using a fork so that I'm not over mixing it with my hands and mushing it around. This way it can just make a nice softer, fluffed up product at this point. And then here is where I fudge up. I have now had too much flour in my original recipe, and when I add it, it is too much flour. If you follow the recipe, you will have the correct amount of flour. So in between shots, I had to remeasure some wet ingredients and bring it back to at least a product I could show you the process of rolling it out and cutting it. So this is extremely dry. Yours will not look like this. But I eventually fix it, which it has to happen a lot of times in a lot of things in life, but in the kitchen more times than none. So after I have fixed my mistake, I now knead it out, and kneading it helps some of the moisture come out, so it will change its complexity. And we're going to knead until we say it has elasticity and it is sticky like a sticker, not like a nasty soupy glue, but a nice sticker where it tacks just a little and sticks to your finger, and it's got some give when you push into it. So as we did with the oven, preheating it, we're going to get our water ready for the gnocchi. We'll salt it and bring it up to a boil on the side as we cut and form our gnocchi. So flour your board. I'm going to flour 2 boards so I can keep a nice mise en place, or everything in its place, going. I'm going to cut this into 4 equal, let's just call it equal, parts. And we're going to snake it out almost like you did when you were playing with Play-Doh as a kid. We want to have just enough flour that it doesn't stick to the board, but not so much flour that you continue to dry it out. You want it to continue to have that elasticity. And when all of them have been rolled out, we go back and we cut out the pillows. Now, in some restaurants I've worked in, would be where we would end, and in some cultures, that's where they end as well. They call them little hooves at this point. Hooves as in, you know, your horse or donkey or cow or anything like that. But we're going to go back and put those trademark grooves on. And we just need a regular house fork, I don't know what that means. Just a regular fork around your house. You're going to roll it on the end that you actually cut from. And you just want to do this individually to each one. It actually goes faster than you would imagine it would. Just press enough that the grooves come through, but that you're not completely pushing it all the way through. And as you see, as I roll, I get that little indent on the back end as well when my finger pushes it down. I think if you're doing it professionally, it's actually 2 sticks that you roll it through. I may be wrong on this, but I believe that is in fact true. But, like I said, a regular old fork will do fine. So, let's set up our shock bath. And that is just water cold with some sort of ice pack or ice added to it. And this will stop the cooking process that will start in this pot. We're going to drop the gnocchi into the salted water. And I started it at about 1 minute. And what we need is for the gnocchi to float to the top. So as you see, it sinks at this point. And in about 1 minute, I get 1 or 2 of them to float, and I want all of them to float. So for my oven, it was about 1 minute and say 15 seconds. It could be different for yours as it is for mine. But again, what we're looking for is that trademark float. So here's where the shock bath comes into play. I'm going to strain the hot product out, get all that water out of it, and then I'm going to drop it into my shock bath, again, which is the ice pack or ice cubes and some sort of cold water. This stops the cooking process so that I may saute it later when it's nice and firm, so I can get nice color on the outside. So we need to strain out the eventual cold gnocchi and have some sort of container ready after. I have a shallow 6 because I can put a top on it easily. As long as you have some sort of container that you have a top, or even if you have plastic wrap to put over the top, you can put it into the fridge and it won't get all weird in the refrigerator. And now we need to work on our, let's just call it pan sauce. Simple enough. So first off, I just need to slice the sausage. Simple, no need to worry about thickness at all, whatever you want. You're just going to cook it and get the fat and beautiful flavor out of each one. Then, as I said earlier, the wine will deglaze, the garlic will add flavor, and our butter and cream will make a thick base for us. As always, make sure your pan is hot before you actually put your product in. It is silly to just put it right onto the stovetop and drop whatever you're dropping into it, because you want a good sear, especially on this sausage. And notice I'm using a wooden spoon. Wooden spoons are best for any kind of, we'll call it, moving around of the product, just so you're not scraping up that pan or pot. You're just moving the product and leaving the, especially this one, it's a non-stick kind of Teflon one. I don't want to scrape that up. So I'm showing you the bits of sausage left over, and now we're going to use this red wine to deglaze. And deglazing just gets all the flavors up and helps you kind of clean the bottom of the pan. Next, we're going to add garlic. I would say it's somewhere around 2 teaspoons I put in. Again, I'm really not using a recipe. I'm sorry if you wanted one. I think a lot of this is just trying to show you technique and learning how easy it is to just make something with a few products you have around your house. The butter goes in and we swirl that around so that it doesn't burn or brown. And then as that simmers up, we add our cream. The cream will again be our base. And we're looking for something that's thin enough, but not too thick. So swirl it around, let all those flavors come together. Here we have our nappe, which is, as always, it is thin enough for you to run your finger through it and leave a line, but thick enough to stick and let that line stay without the sauce kind of running back into it. And here I'm transferring it to a smaller pan, so that I can put it into the back of the stove while I finish up the gnocchi and the sausage. Again, just as important to get your pan hot and then put your oil in and let that get hot. I'm showing you here how it has a nice shimmer. It almost turns water-like in consistency as opposed to oil consistency that oil would have. And we're gonna drop these gnocchi in. I enjoy to put a nice hard sear on the outside of gnocchi. I prefer it to not char, but get nice and crispy on the outside. It kind of makes little baked potatoes, and I enjoy that flavor much more. So they've got color on them. They might not see gnocchi very many times with that much color on it, but that is what I enjoy. I think it is good anyway. If you don't hit it as hard, it's just as good, but I prefer a good hard sear on the outside. It adds another texture of crisp. And I'm putting the sausage back in. I don't think I said that earlier. I took it out so that I could reuse the pan. And here is our plating. So, first off, we're going to put the sauce down first so they can control the amount of sauce that they want to put on each gnocchi and each spoonful or forkful, whatever it may be. And it also lets you showcase your plate. Because if you think about it, if you just put the sauce on the top, you're kind of covering all that work you just put into it. So I want to show off the color that I put on the gnocchi and the sausage, so we don't want to cover it all with sauce and lose all the work we just put into it. And it kind of is just the way it makes it look fancy schmancy if you put the sauce down first. And here I have shaved some white cheddar with just a peeler and some oregano leaves I plucked from the front. And notice how I'm placing them. It's kind of meticulous but random at the same time. I hate to say it like that, but it's true. You kind of want to make it look like someone just didn't accidentally dump this stuff onto the top of it. You want to place it so that it looks like someone put care into it, but not so it's a sterile similarity to every other dish. Kind of put your own signature on it.
Alright, time to taste the gnocchi we made. Hot. You might say I really gnocchi my way around the kitchen. Thank you for watching. It's been a couple weeks, I apologize. I think I'm going to do every other week from here on out. But until then, you came, you sauteed, you conquered. Make sure you leave your towel in the oven for a solid 15 to 20 minutes before you remember and it starts smoking in the whole kitchen after you take your shot of you putting the potatoes in the oven. I'd say about 450 for about 15 minutes to get this nice brown color.